I never thought my own daughter would betray me. For most of my life, I worked, sacrificed, and devoted myself to my family. I believed that love, respect, and gratitude would be natural fruits of all that effort. But life has a cruel way of proving us wrong. My name is Helena, and I am 62 years old. I live in the same house where I raised my children alongside my late husband Augusto. It is a simple but cozy house with a wide backyard where we planted orange and lemon trees. Every corner carries memories of our lives together. After Augusto's passing 5 years ago, I dedicated myself even more to the family. My daughter Patricia, my only child, had married Rodrigo, a man who never won me over. He was always too slick with words, always talking about money and opportunities, always trying to show off. But for my daughter's happiness, I stayed silent. At first, I thought Rodrigo was just ambitious, but over Chimi I began to notice something darker. His obsession with property, inheritance, and money that wasn't his. My life seemed simple. I spent my mornings taking care of the garden, my afternoons reading old novels, and on weekends, I had the joy of being with my granddaughter Anna. She was my sunshine, the innocent bond that still connected me to. Anna loved to spend afternoons baking cakes with me, playing in the backyard, or listening to stories about how her grandfather built this house brick by brick. But things began to change, grew more distant, and Rodrigo increasingly invasive. He often stopped by to check on things, as if he wearing tea, capable of taking care of myself. One afternoon, while drinking coffee in the kitchen, he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Mrs. Helena, this house is too big for you alone. Wouldn't it be better to put it in S name already? That way you can rest easy." I felt my stomach knot. That house wasn't just a pile of bricks. It was my life. "Rodrigo, this house belongs to me until the day I die." Augusto made sure of that. He forced a smile. Of course. Of course. I was just suggesting. But I could see the disappointment in his eyes. He was already thinking about that house as his. It was my granddaughter Anna's 10th birthday. I spent the week preparing the cake, decorations, everything with my own hands. For me, it wasn't just a party. It was a way of showing that family unity still mattered. But during the party, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Rodrigo gave orders as if he owned the place, moving furniture, telling people where to sit, and she didn't stop him. At one point, Rodrigo raised his glass and said in front of everyone, "Well, soon Anna will inherit this place, right? After all, this house won't last forever with the old lady." Some laughed awkwardly. Others looked at me with pity. My face burned. Didn't he say a word? I forced a smile, but inside I felt something break. That night, alone in my room, I read and reread a letter Augusto had left me years earlier. In it, he assured me that I had lifelong usufruct of the house and the land. "No one can take this away from you," he had written. For the first time, I clutched that letter like a shield, because deep down, I already sensed my own family would try to betray me. I always thought blood ties were unbreakable, but I discovered, in the most painful way, that some people are capable of selling even their own mother for money. The months after Anna's birthday were filled with small doses of poison. Rodrigo appeared almost every day at my house, under different pretenses. Sometimes he said he needed to check the electrical wiring, other times inspect the property. I knew he wasn't concerned about me. He had his eyes on every brick of that house, started changing too. She used to call me every day. Now she would go weeks without a word, and when she came, it was only to ask me to sign papers I didn't understand. One day, she arrived with Rodrigo, placing a stack of documents on the table. "Mom, this is just to make administration easier. Rodrigo knows these notary things, you just need to sign." I put on my glasses and read slowly. The words were complicated, but one phrase caught my eye: transfer of property rights. My heart raced. "Is this about the house?" I asked. Rodrigo sighed loudly. "Mrs. Helena, you're already over 60. Wouldn't it be better to settle this quickly? That way, if something happens, there's no bureaucracy." I looked at my daughter, expecting her to defend me, but she said nothing. It's okay, Mom. You decide. Decide. What a bitter word when the one you love asks it while hiding a knife behind their back. I refused to sign. Rodrigo clenched his teeth, and S. irritation was thinly veiled. All right, Mom, your choice, she said, but her tone was cold, not loving. December arrived. Christmas, for me, had always been the most important date. I spent weeks preparing recipes, sewing small gifts, decorating the house with lights. It was a symbol of family unity. That year, things were different. Told me at the last minute that the dinner would be at some friend's house because it est more modern and spacious. I hesitated but accepted. I baked my signature walnut cake and went alone. When I arrived, I noticed my cake had been placed in a corner, nearly hidden. No one seemed to care. Rodrigo, as usual, was the center of attention, boasting about his business deals, showing off a new watch, laughing loudly. In the middle of the evening, someone commented about inheritance, about how children should plan well. Then Rodrigo, with a mocking smile, said loudly, "Oh, don't worry. Soon Mom's house will be ours. It's just a matter of time." The room went silent. Some people laughed nervously, others looked at me with pity. I felt my blood boil. "Rodrigo," I said, my voice trembling, "how dare you speak like that?" He raised his hands, feigning innocence. "Come on, Mrs. Helena, it's not a lie. You're old. You won't be taking this with you. We're the ones who will take care of everything. And my daughter, my own daughter, didn't say a word in my defense. She just lowered her eyes, seemingly in agreement. My heart broke right there, in front of everyone. I was treated like a burden, like I should simply disappear. I wanted to cry, but I swallowed the tears. They would not make a fool out of me. A few days later, I went to the bank to check my statements. Something was off. Large withdrawals I hadn't authorized. I asked the manager for help, and he showed me the transfer receipts. Money sent to an account in Rodrigo's name. My stomach churned. He had gained access to my card, probably through... At that moment, I knew it was just disrespect. It was a calculated theft. That's when I found my first ally. Mrs. Teresa, my neighbor across the street. She had seen Rodrigo entering my house at strange hours when I wasn't there. "Helena, I didn't want to tell you before to avoid worrying you, but I've noticed that man snooping through your cabinets. He's no good." I already knew. I had suspected it, but hearing it from someone else confirmed it. I decided to hire a lawyer. I brought the statements, Augusto's letter, with the lifelong usufruct of the property, and showed everything. The lawyer, Mr. Marcello, looked at me seriously. "Mrs. Helena, you don't just have evidence of fraud, you also have strong legal protection. If we act carefully, we can turn this game around." At that moment, something inside me changed. It was no longer just pain. It was determination. I promised myself then and there they would pay for every tear they made me swallow. When I left Mr. Marcello's office, I felt I was no longer alone on this twisted road. It was as if a small, steady light had turned on inside me. This was no longer just about proving I had been robbed. It was about reclaiming my dignity, and if necessary, exposing my daughter and Rodrigo so no one else would fall victim to that family. The first thing the lawyer explained in terms I could understand was the legal protection I had. The lifelong usufruct of the property was registered in the notary, and it could only be revoked with my signature or by very specific court decision. Additionally, with proof of the transfers to Rodrigo's account, there were clear signs of embezzlement and possible fraud in case they had used my identity or forged documents. "Mrs. Helena," he said, his voice firm, "we need to plan everything carefully. They are smart, but not infallible. We will gather evidence, statements, witnesses, house entry and exit logs, messages, anything. And when the time comes, we will use the usufruct as our hammer." When he said, "when the time comes," a cold thrill ran down my spine. Planning, that would be my new verb. I was moving from victim to strategist. The first ally came faster than I imagined. Mrs. Teresa, who had already helped me open my eyes, agreed to monitor the house and take notes. She had a memory like an elephant and the eyes of a hawk. She could remember the color of a stranger's shoes after a single glance. More than once she called with reports I treasured. Helena, today at 9:17 a.m. I saw Rodrigo leaving with a folder. It looked like documents. 5 minutes later, he returned empty. Another unexpected ally was my eldest grandson, Lucas. He's 22, a computer technician, and lives a few neighborhoods away. When I told him what had happened, he was stunned. Grandma, we can track things. Banks, leave digital traces. If Rodrigo transferred money, he had to use an app or branch. If there's an email or digital signature, we can check logs. Let me try. I watched him with pride. He had always been observant, first to fix the radio, the first to share jokes at lunch. Now, he would turn skills into weapons. I also contacted my old friend Irasima, who works at City Hall and knows the notary system. She offered to check property histories and see if there had been any attempts to register the land in someone else's name. With Mr. Marcelo leading the legal side, Mrs. Teresa on the street, Lucas handling the digital trail, and Irasima chasing paper records, I felt like a commander in her fortress. The plan wasn't improvised. We wrote down every step, like following a recipe. Document everything. Statements, receipts, witness accounts, bank records, photos, even delivery slips. Set a digital trap. Lucas created a fake email and message pretending to be a buyer for the property. Rodrigo was greedy. Any promise of quick money was bait. Esposi publicly organized a family gathering where we could subtly present evidence, photos, receipts, and finally, Agus used the usufruct as a shield. When they tried to force any transfer, the notary and the usufruct would block their attempts. The final reveal show not just the theft but the web of transactions. Coincidentally, Rodrigo's account was tied to other fraudulent activities, which, when revealed, would unravel everything, and the most delicate step, plant a false sense of security. We left hints suggesting an urgent buyer, making Rodrigo act rashly and leave mistakes. Our detective work began. Every day brought a small victory. Lucas accessed my bank login history with authorization. There were logins at times I swore I hadn't used the computer. One was at 9:02 p.m. on a Thursday, the exact night I had gone to Baydand. It came from an IP link to Rodrigo's workplace. Grandma, look, a transfer of $40,000 at 9:06 p.m. to a corporate account, and 5 minutes later, another $20,000 to Comercial Hualimi. I felt sick. That was a lot of money, and the pattern was clear. Small transfers to hide theft, a classic laundering scheme. Mrs. Teresa provided photos. One afternoon, she discreetly photographed Rodrigo carrying a folder into my house. Another showed a delivery receipt for a company matching the transfers. Irasima checked the notary and found 2 attempts to claim part of the land through legal maneuver in bluff. Because the usufruct protected me, but it revealed their audacity. It's intimidation, Irasima said. They hope fear will make elderly owners give in. We started planting small defeats. Lucas sent an email from buyer_interested at vendasbr.com at 9 a.m., offering $400,000 for the property, ready to close immediately. Rodrigo took the bait. At 3:10 p.m., he was seen rushing out with papers. 5 minutes later, he returned empty-handed, nervous. Meanwhile, Mr. Marcelo sent an official notice to Rodrigo warning that any attempt to transfer the property without my consent would be contested and that there was already a criminal complaint for embezzlement. We also planted a false clue, a supposed buyer offering $350. Ling. Rodrigo, in panic, took desperate measures, contacted investors, all while we strengthened our legal case. Showed up one day, feigning reconciliation. Mom, I'm sorry. Can we fix things? I kept calm. I want peace too. Daughter. How? Peace. She hagged me, but I knew it was manipulation. Lucas had installed a hidden recorder in my desk, capturing conversations where Rodrigo admitted, in 2 months, the house is ours. We just need a forged signature. With evidence in hand and the enemies distracted, Mr. Marcello suggested we prepare a public reveal. It had to strike where it hurt, their pride and reputation. We chose the annual condominium meeting. Everyone would be there. Neighbors, acquaintances, and even Rodrigo's circle. We combined a buyer visit to lure him into action and the official meeting where we would expose the fraud with documents, photos, and audio recordings. We expose everything, Mr. Marcello said, tapping the table. The transfers, the notary attempts, the audio. Once the community sees the truth, there's no forgiveness. I took a deep breath. Facing my own daughter publicly would break my heart, but justice had to be undeniable. The night before the condominium meeting, I barely slept. Mrs. Teresa knocked at my window at 2:30 a.m. With a note, I saw Rodrigo and two men at the corner bar. They seemed to be planning something. 5 minutes later, I heard a muffled car engine. The note in my hand felt like a warning. They were moving fast, maybe to beat the fake buyer trap. The next hour would be decisive. I held Augusto's letter close. Around me, my allies breathed confidence. Inside, I was a knot of emotions. Scenes needed to be staged, witnesses ready, documents organized. One certainty. When the meeting began, nothing would be the same.